Hey guys, how we doing this morning? Glad to see you. We're here again with another episode of Next Gen, and I am so excited about this one. Not because of the lesson, which is cool, but also because this is going to be the last recording that I do. Okay, and no, Mr. Jake's not leaving or something like that, but uh, this is going to be the last time we're going to have to record because next time we're going to be meeting in person. So you guys keep in mind and remember when you come here next Sunday on the what is it, the 2nd of August, we will be meeting in person during the service like we always did before. Okay. And so there's just a couple quick things I want to go over before we do that. We're going to be having only one of the iPads open for you guys to sign in, and one of our volunteers will be running that. We are going to be maintaining 6 feet of distance while we're in the loft, while we're transporting to and from the loft, and unless you're here with your brother or your sister, or you guys rode together, whatever, then you can sit together. That's fine. The game room is going to be closed. The couches are going to be closed. All right, so it's going to be a little bit different. But it's still going to be cool. It's still going to be good. We're still going to have time to talk with you guys and see how you've been doing and teach you the lesson and still socialize and still have fun. We can have fun, you know, uh, and learn about God and grow even if we don't have the game room, if we don't have you know some things that sometimes we do on Sundays. All right, so it's not going to be too bad. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. I'm just happy to be able to see you guys again, honestly. And I hope you're happy to see us and see the teachers too. So we look forward to seeing you guys. Um, and I look forward to teaching this lesson today. So this lesson today um, that we're going to be talking about comes from Luke chapter 12. So we're continuing on in Luke. And if you remember, Jesus taught about discipleship. He talked about the cost of discipleship. Then we talked about what Jesus taught about prayer. And now we're going to talk about what Jesus taught about treasure. Now, why do you think those things are in that order? Why do you think these lessons are progressing in that way? Because we need to know what discipleship is if we're going to be a disciple. We need to know what discipleship is going to cost if we're going to be a disciple. And then part of being a disciple, so part of being a disciple is paying the cost of being a disciple. And part of being a disciple is knowing how to pray. Part of being a disciple, we talked about in our lesson on prayer that prayer was one for asking for an empowerment from God, right? That that was a, a way that they as a group could ask for God to come and dwell with them and empower them and fulfill his mission on earth. All right, so we did talk about that. And we talked about persistence in prayer as well. Now we're going to talk about treasure. And so prayer and treasure and the cost of discipleship, those things are all wrapped up in discipleship. So a good disciple is going to pray. A good disciple is going to be willing to pay the cost. A good disciple is going to follow Jesus so close that they can taste the dust from his feet. Remember, we talked about that they would walk. These teachers would travel and walk, and their disciples would try and follow as close um, to them as they possibly could. And so we're today talking about treasure. Okay, and so now I'm not talking about pirate treasure. I'm talking about the treasure that you've got in your pocket, or maybe you don't have any. You guys aren't that old, so maybe you don't have a whole lot of money. Um, but it's not just money. Okay, and so we're also, when we talk about treasure, we're going to talk about this word called stewardship. Okay, and so we are going to um, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means to be a steward. Okay, and what it means to uh, properly use your wealth and your income, your increase, your talents, your treasures. So without further ado, let's have a word of prayer and get into it. So, dear Lord, I thank you for this day. Thank you for each and every child that's going to watch this, each and every adult, Lord. I pray that you bless them, you keep them, Lord, you would teach us how to use everything that you've given us to the maximum benefit for your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's start. Luke chapter 12, verse 15. He then told them, watch out and be on guard against all greed, because one's life is not in the abundance of possessions. Remember that. Life's worth is not in the abundance of possessions. Then he told them a parable. So this parable is going to help explain a little bit about what that statement means. A rich man's land was very productive. He thought to himself, what should I do since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I will do this, he said. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones to store all my grain and my goods there. Okay, so guy has very fertile land. So that's the first thing that stuck out to me, is that this guy's increase, the crops that he was able to get. Maybe you guys have had some time to travel around and see different things outside since we've been on lockdown. I hope you have. There's tons of farm fields around here. You get outside of Raleigh, excuse me, and Wake Forest. There are tons of farm fields. There's soybeans, and people grow tobacco around here. You might see some cornfields. You might see other crops all around. NC State has big fields up. Um, I think it's north of the college. I can't remember. Well, no, I think it's south. Whatever. So they have things, and they have animals out there. They have a veterinary school, so they have um, cows and goats, and I'm sure they have horses and different exotic animals, and so they have things out there, and so they have buildings to store all that, right? um, the farmer, the reason why, if you were to go to NC State and you see their things are healthy and they produce, it's because they took care of the soil. It's because um, they have tilled it and worked it and all these things. Okay, and so but the soil, the ground itself was uh, fertile for this guy. And so back then they didn't have all the technology, all the things we have today to be able to make bad soil good. And so you were reliant on whatever the soil was, where you lived or where you owned your property. And so his livelihood and his wealth wasn't really from him. Okay, it was because the soil was good. And so it's the Luke is asking us here. We're supposed to take from our minds and think about this. Well, why is the soil good? Well, because God made it good, right? And lest you not think that's the case, at NC State or whatever, God has given us knowledge and abilities, and the ability to find techniques and ways to make the soil good. Okay, and that came along after many years. But anyways, we're getting off track. So his wealth was not from himself. I want you to remember that. It was because of the soil. It's because of God's blessing on the soil, I would say. So then I'll say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, those whose will they be? This is how it is with those who store up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Then he said to his disciples, Therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about the body, what you will wear, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap, they don't have a storeroom or barn, and yet God feeds them. Aren't you worth much more than the birds? So the man had this great increase, and he said, I'm going to build even bigger barns, and I am going to take it easy for the rest of my life. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to relax. I'm going to eat. I'm going to party. I'm, going to drink, do whatever, and just have a good old time on what I have built, what I have earned. And so Jesus is speaking against that, right? Because he says, you don't know how much time you have. He says this man, his life was going to be required of him. So this excuse me, plays into our definition of stewardship. And so God's intention for mankind is that we serve him as a faithful steward of his creation. So what does it mean to be a steward? And that comes from Genesis 1:28 and 1 Corinthians 4:1-2, if you want to look those up. What is a steward? Now, I have to confess to you that this morning before I came to church, I was watching a little bit of the Lord of the Rings, the first movie. If you guys have seen that, it's an awesome movie. It's the one where Gandalf stops the Balrog and then falls down into the pit. Hopefully, I didn't just ruin it for you, uh, but in the I guess in the third movie, I think the last one, The Return of the King, there's the guy who lives in the big white tower, and he's what? He's called the steward of Gondor, right? The big kingdom, this amazing kingdom, beautiful city. Now he had let it go into disrepair, and the walls are falling down, and different things weren't the way they were supposed to. But he was a steward, and so what does that mean? We see that his reign as steward ended when the king arrived, right? So when Aragorn came back, the steward, he did some bad things, but he left. He went off the scene, right? So what a steward is someone who holds someone else's possessions, who holds the king's possessions until the king returns. So showing stewardship is the act of holding those possessions in a manner in which is glorifying to the one who actually gave them to you. So we go back to our guy, his wealth was because of the land that God had blessed. And instead of holding those things and using those to be able to further the kingdom, he used it to further his kingdom. So he didn't use the resources of the king to build the king's kingdom. And that's the definition of stewardship for us, that we take the resources we have and we use them for the kingdom. Now, we talked a little bit about the kingdom when we were talking about the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, right? And so the very next thing Jesus did was set someone free from oppression. So we want to be using our resources to set people free. Okay, find areas where freedom is happening, where you can bring ease to somebody else, right? Instead of taking your money and your possessions and your talents and making your life good for you at the expense of somebody else, you want to take those things and make their life good for them at your expense because it's not yours anyways. All right, that's the whole point of this. It's not really yours, and so you're able to do that. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what about me? God certainly, doesn't want me to live in a cardboard box, right? He wants to take care of his children, right? Have some clothing, some food to eat, and so we have to go back and we have to think about our lesson on the cost of discipleship, where we aren't necessarily guaranteed those things, right? Where Jesus said foxes have holes, and I don't remember the second part of it, but he said the Son of Man doesn't have anywhere to lay his head. He said, if you're going to follow me, he was saying that to someone who was going to follow him, you might not have a place to sleep every night. Now, they traveled around, so that's part of probably what he meant, is that you're going to have to give up the comfort of your home to come follow me. But it stands to reason he might call you to do that. He might be calling you to travel around and preach the gospel. He may be calling you maybe for work, for a job or something. I mean, you guys are young, but you're thinking about your career, I think, already. And so maybe he's calling you to travel for your income, and maybe you won't have a set place where you live quite the same as somebody else. Well, I'm telling you that you are able to share the gospel. You're able to do kingdom work. So it's not only Is it sharing the gospel that Jesus came, died, was buried, and raised again, so that you can be free from your sins? It's also sharing of your possessions and your gifts that you've been given to alleviate suffering, because that's part of what Jesus came here to do. He came to break bonds, he came to alleviate suffering. And so as we follow him as his disciples, remember, we're following him closely, we're going to be doing the same things. And so stewardship is part of that. And so you leverage your income and you leverage your gifts to do those things. And so let's go back to what I was talking about. Well, what about me? How am I going to be provided for? Well, you will be provided for. You will be taken care of. And the example he uses is the birds of the air, right? And the flowers of the field. Think about it. Well, we go out and we mow the grass every day. Well, he cares about that grass. If you ever seen a beautiful field with uh, flowers in it, I love it personally. I grew up in farming country, and so I'd love to see a beautiful field that's full of hay. Now, I used to bale hay for a living. Whenever I was a kid in high school, I would throw it up in the barn and stack it. And so I don't like that part of it. That part of it is hard work. But seeing that beautiful field out there with the when the wind blows and the hay is going like this, and it's all the same color and it's uniform. It's beautiful green, tall, healthy grass. I love seeing that. But we cut it down and we feed it to animals, and um, you know, but it grows back, right? It comes back, and so he's saying, let's just read the text here. So it says, "Can any of you add one moment to his life by worrying? If then you're not able even to do this little thing, why worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They don't labor or spin thread. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was adorned like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass, which is in the field today and is thrown into the furnace tomorrow, how much more will he do for you, O you of little faith?" So that's what he's saying. He said, if I provide for them, I'm going to provide for you. He comes into verse 31, then he says, "But seek his kingdom, and these things will be provided for you. Don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to the poor, make money bags for yourselves that won't grow old, an inexhaustible treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So he says a lot of things there. He says, seek your kingdom, and these things will be provided for you. And so your focus, our focus, my focus, your focus is to be on the kingdom, is to be on setting people free, is to be on sharing the gospel, is to be on making disciples. Okay? That's to be our focus. And then we should expect that God provides for us as we do that. So maybe the answer to why God isn't providing for us is we're not seeking his kingdom. And so he says to take the treasure that we have and lay it up in heaven where neither moth nor rust will destroy, right? So how do we do that? Can we take our money and put it in heaven? I mean, like take it and put it, but how do you how do you do that? Well, it's what I've been talking about the whole time. You take your money and you convert it. So if your money is here on earth, now back in those days they had metal money, right? They had coins and stuff that could rust, could break down and stuff like that. We have paper, which is even worse, right? If it'll rot, if you put it on the ground or whatever. And so the way you convert that is through people. And so in the winning of people into the kingdom, doing the kingdom work, you convert that money from temporal to eternal. You take that money and you lay it up in heaven. You take that resource and you lay it up in heaven. You take that gift and you lay it up in heaven. That's how you do it. All right? You can do that in a variety of ways. You can do that by giving to the poor. You can do that by helping to feed the hungry. You can do that by giving to your church. You have a good church that does outreach, that does a lot of those things. You can do it by giving, helping support a missionary. And it's not just giving, it's not just money. It's I had the opportunity to help a missionary out by editing his newsletter when he was getting started with it. And so I did that for a few months until he kind of got on his feet and got going and things. And so I was able to help him do that. It was no sweat off my back. I enjoyed doing it. I liked doing it. He was happy to have me do it because was going here, there, and everywhere and doing things and trying to do his work down there. And so that's an option. I mean, coming in here to church and helping out with the serve day. Coming in and cleaning up around here, so it's nice and it's presentable when people come in and they can feel comfortable and they can receive the word that God has for them. Excuse me. All of these things are ways that you can steward your talents and your abilities for the kingdom. So, guys, I want to encourage you this week that as you go about your week, as you go about especially your mornings, I want you to ask God to show you how you can invest in his kingdom, to show you, and that's going to be in the form probably of a person. Okay, he's going to bring a person along that you can invest in, that you can bring into the kingdom, that you can steward your resources, that you can take what you've been given and use it to build God's kingdom. So I want you to just pray with me and say, "Dear Lord, I want you to use me for your kingdom. Lord, give me wisdom as I steward my resources, as I take what you've given me and use it to build your kingdom, and use it to break bondage, Lord, isn't it? And use it to bring freedom and feed the hungry and give to the thirsty, Lord. Just help us to give us wisdom as we go throughout this week. And I trust God that he is going to do that for you. He's going to do that for me because he's all about building his kingdom, because he's all about people, because he loves people. He sent his own son to die for them. Guys, I love you. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Have an awesome week. Have an awesome Sunday. We'll see you.